For the reading of the Word this morning comes from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, beginning with verse 27. Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" And they replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others, one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" And Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, and after 3 days he would rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory and with holy angels." This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
You may be seated. If you've ever been to a football game in Georgia, most likely you would have done what many people would do of the day. You would have stopped off by the varsity, and you would have began to hear, as you come in the front door of the restaurant, you begin to hear, "What do you have? What do you have?" And then it would continue to progress, and you would hear this black gentleman would say, "What do you have?" And then he would tell you to have your order on your mind and your money in your hand. What do you have? What do you have? And back then it wasn't a lot of choices, but he wanted you to be quick. And he would always say at the end of that chant, he would say, "And we'll get you to the game on time." That was the focus of most people. They wanted to get in, get them something to eat, get out, and get to the game on time. And so they would hear those words, "What do you have? What do you have?" And I love that. It's a memory that I cherish to have heard in my lifetime. I think about those hot dogs, and it was either going to be a hot dog or a hamburger. And now you always had to have your onion rings there. They had the best onion rings of any place I'd ever eaten at the time. And so I really enjoyed that. It was a great experience for me. You know, the disciples were a lot like football fans. You know, they had finally got them a good coach. They had finally got a good team that they were a part of. And they were winning. I mean, they were winning everywhere. They were winning when the lady with the hemorrhagic problem was just touched the hem of Jesus' garment, and she was healed right there. And Jesus said, "Go and show yourself healed" to the priest. I mean, that's exciting times. If you can't get excited about that, I know a preacher told me one time, if that don't start a fire, any of your wood's wet. All right, it's quite an understatement, if you will, to say that it wasn't exciting to be part of the ministry of Jesus. But they had long gone through all the super miracles, if you will. You know, some got to see the water turn to wine. I'm sure that was exciting. Others got to see the withered hand being straightened again. We saw that lepers were healed. People of disease that had kept them separated from their families for long ago had now been made clean. There was a cleansing that happened of the people of that time. And not only in their physical being, but also in their spiritual nature. and their souls, they were cleansed, and it was exciting to be part of that. They felt it from the crown of their head to the soles of their feet. They were part of something special. But it has its challenges. And I think about what do you have? And I think about how today that sometimes our restaurants are these unique places where we go and we have to choose. I remember taking my children one time into this jelly bean store. I mean, there were millions of jelly beans in that store. I mean, everywhere was jelly beans, all kinds of flavors, all kinds of textures. Some were gummy, some were soft, some were hard. I mean, it was just unreal what the selection was. And I told my boys, I said, you can have three kinds. We're going to limit it to 3 kinds, because I knew how they were. They would have been there all day, sizing it up, making a choice. They couldn't make choices very well. And so they finally looked at me and said, Dad, why did you tell us we could pick 3? Why didn't you just tell us we only could choose 1? Now, I thought I was doing them a favor, but really I wasn't. When you're able to choose more than 1, guess what? It causes you to really scrutinize and to really make that choice hard, because if you get 1, then later on you might be a little disappointed in it, but you won't know how much disappointed you are. If you have 3, guess what? You're comparing them. And you get through eating those 3 different flavors of jelly beans and you think, there had to have been something better, and because this was so much better than this one. And so it really put it was hard on my children to choose when I gave them an opportunity to choose 3, then tell them that if they just choose 1. It was a lot like that with the disciples as they were looking at Jesus and they were following Jesus. We see how that, sometimes it's hard for us to express exactly what we're looking for in our relationship with Jesus Christ. And the disciples were no different. And this was a time, I guess Jesus might have been perturbed with the disciples and all those that were following him. I'm sure that at that point some had fallen away. Some had probably left and gone back to their own lives and no longer were following him. Some of the excitement was probably gone. The luster had kind of worn off, if you will. But I can't help but think that some people began to grumble. And we heard this in other places in the Bible. So we know that was a natural thing for the disciples to do. They grumble over certain things. I mean, the children of Israel grumbled. They'd just gotten out of bondage in Egypt. I mean, then they were something else. They got out of the bondage of Egypt and they were set free, and no longer did they have the threat of the soldiers chasing him. They had been washed away by the Red Sea. But they were still out there grumbling, and they were grumbling for something that was horrible. They were grumbling for the old flesh pots because it was something that they had experienced and it was common to them. They knew that. They didn't like not knowing. They didn't like not knowing where the next meal was going to come from or what it might be. They wanted something routine. They wanted something that they could depend upon. And sometimes Jesus was giving them so much that they didn't know how to deal with it. It's like going into one of these new buffet restaurants. It's pretty exciting when you walk in the door, but after you've gorged and you're thinking, well, they charge you so much money, you got to get your money's worth, and you go back to your table and start ciphering to figure out, well, have I gotten enough, is it paid for itself here, and you barely can walk out of that place. I know, that's what I do. But so we think about that, and so I'm sure that Jesus was offering so much to the disciples, they didn't really know how to take it all in. I mean, he was everything that they were looking for. But some were looking for something different. And I'm sure that they began to grumble a little bit. I'm sure that they began to criticize a little bit. You know, that's going to come. With any leadership, it's coming. We call that the honeymoon period. The first few months that a pastor comes to a church, oh yeah, you love him. You love him. You love his family. And you know, you think, oh, this is going to be good. We want you here for a long time. And then next thing you know, you're seeing, you know, U-Hauls coming by. And people might even be circling sales opportunities in the newspapers for houses way away from where you live. Well, I'm having fun here a little bit. But it's human nature. It's human nature that the new is going to wear off and the criticism will come. And oftentimes the nitpicking begins to happen. And it's a process. And what you have to do when that happens is you have to refocus on what's important. What truly is important for us today as a church? And keep that as the main focus in your hearts. Is it about me? Is it about me being served? Is it about me getting exactly what I want? Is it about me, how that I have to have it my way? That I have to have it done a certain way? We all know that kind of restaurant, don't we? You know, you go in and you've been going there for years and you know the waitress and somehow you come in and they don't automatically just say, what do you have? What do you have? They might say it a little nicer in the more expensive restaurants, but sometimes you go into one of the standard meat and three restaurants and you look over the menu and here it comes. Well, I want my meatloaf today, but I don't want that red sauce on top of it. I want it on the side. Put it in a different bowl and make sure that I get those butter beans and stir it up real good so I don't get that old skim on the top of it. I want to make sure that I get the good ones down in the bottom. So go ahead and stir that up and put them in my bowl. And also make sure that you don't put my fried okra so that it can get soggy on anything, okay? And I want to keep that good and fresh and crunchy. And the waitress will look at you. Would you like some butter on your roll? You like butter or margarine on your roll? You'll look at them. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm not picky. We all know what that's like. But we need to keep our focus on what's important. What's important is we're nourished. And that we're eating well that makes us healthy. And that we're enjoying and appreciative of what we have. I think that's what needs to happen in the church. We need to keep the main focus upon what it is that we're here for. One is to worship a mighty God who is greater than our circumstances, who is wonderfully and He is committed. He was so committed that He gave His life. He gave His life on a cross so that you too could experience grace. That you too could experience the power of His Heavenly Father. And if we keep that in perspective, then we know who we're following. And we know what we're committed to. And the other thing is that we're to share the good news. We're to share who He is and what He is. We see how Jesus did with the disciples. We see how that he first asked them, who do you say I am? And then He went right straight to it. Who do others say that I am? Because He knew that they probably wouldn't want to say who that they thought He was. They were real quiet when he asked, who do you say I am? Because they knew that just as suddenly as they would say it, that it could all go away. And they were scared of that. They were scared that maybe He would say, no, that's not who I am. And they would be disappointed. And they would be disillusioned. Because some of them were looking for something different. We know that some got it. Some understood from the very beginning that He was the Messiah, that He was the one that had come to fulfill the prophecies. But others thought He was he was one of the prophets. He was another prophet in their midst. And they enjoyed that. They were part of something big. They were part of something powerful. But the problem was that when they thought he was someone that was coming and to tell about which is to come in the future and how things are going to be in the future, a prophet, that takes some of the authority. It still gives a little bit of authority because they're a prophet. But it takes some of the authority away, and he's not fully who they want him to be. As a prophet, he could not fulfill for them exactly what they were seeking. But for others, he was the Messiah. He was the Messiah who had come to complete that which had been told to them, that which they had been hoping for, that which they had believed and trusted in. So who is he? Can you answer that question today? Who is Christ? Who is Christ to us? I think about a little boy that went with his parents to a little restaurant, and they'd gone in for a quick meal, and the mother began to order for the children, and she had ordered for the husband. And each time the waitress was she was a very wise veteran waitress. She was the kind of waitress that didn't take anything off of anybody and kept you on your toes. She was the kind of waitress that knew exactly how to treat you and to serve you. And so this waitress was there, and everybody had ordered, and they had all gone through all their picky little details, and they had scrutinized everything and asked questions about everything. And finally she came to the little boy, and she looked at the little boy and says, "What do you have?" And the little boy says, Who, me? And she said, "Yes, what will you have today? What would you like to eat?" And the little boy says, "Oh, I'd like a hot dog and some French fries and some milk." And the boy was excited, and he told her, and so the mother immediately said, no, he'll have the beef, and make sure that it's on toast and white toast, and he'll have the juice. And as she was saying all of this, the veteran waitress turned to the little boy and says, "What do you have on your hot dog?" And she says, "I want ketchup, and lots of ketchup." And so she wrote it down on her little pad, never veered back to the mother again, and left to go prepare their food. You can imagine the mother was just in astonishment. She just couldn't believe what had just happened. And she was so upset. But then it was the little boy that turned to him and said, "Did you see that, Mother?" "What?" "Yeah, I saw her leave here getting you hot dogs that I didn't want you to have." "No, did you see that, Mother? She thinks I'm somebody." Wow. That's who Jesus is. That's who Jesus is. He's personal. And he thinks we're somebody. And he wants to bless us. He wants to pour out his blessings upon us, and he wants to help us to prosper, and he wants to help us to have joy, and he wants us to have peace. And he wants us to share that peace, and to share that joy, and to share that love. So if you have connected to Jesus on this level, then you know Jesus. He's personal. He's personal, and he loves you. And he wants to bless you, and he wants to change your life. He wants you to have so many blessings in your life that you're able to see him at all times, in all places, in all ways. And if you would just be like that little boy that takes it all in, and it lifts up your heart and excites you just a little bit, then you can go and you can share with others, just like that little boy, of who Jesus is. That's where our focus needs to be, church. Not on the details, not on what we think we want, what we might want, what we have a hankering for in church, but to where we can come and worship a God that sent His Son Jesus to love us like we've never been loved before. And we can be followers. Yes, we'll have to pick up our cross and we'll have to bear burdens of this world. But isn't it easier to pick up that cross? Isn't it easy to bear the burdens of this world when we know that we are loved? And that we know that we have somebody that's got our back and wants to bless us. We can be like a family that went to a restaurant and they saw this woman. She was another veteran waitress, and no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't make her smile. They tried to joke with her a little bit. They tried to flatter her and compliment her. It didn't work. She never once cracked a smile. She never once gave them a look that everything's okay. She just did her work and went on. And at the end of the meal, as the family was leaving, they looked at her and says, "Have a nice day." And the waitress looked at him and says, "I've already made plans. I have other plans." When you come into church today, you can find joy. If you come into church today, you can find hope because people are being healed. When you come into church today, you can find peace because you know you won't be abandoned and you don't have to be alone. When you come into church today, you can find joy because your heart is lifted up when you worship a mighty God. When you do what you were created to do. When you allow yourself to be part of something greater than you, you experience immense joy. So if we will keep our hearts focused upon Him, and we will become followers of Him, committed day in and day out to follow Him, then we can choose to be happy or not. But it's our choice. It's our choice. Will we be happy this day? Will we be filled with joy? Will we have peace that surpasses all understanding? It's right here before you, being poured out and offered by an amazing servant. One that did something for you that you cannot do for yourself. He died on a cross and broke the bonds of the grave. Will you follow Him?